Hi, I'm Zibby Owens, and you're listening to the Webby-nominated podcast, Moms Don't Have Time to Read Books. Please also check out my other podcast, Kids Do Have Time to Read Books. I'm on Instagram at Zibby Owens and at Moms Don't Have Time to Read Books and at Kids Do Have Time to Read. So please follow me. And if at any time you have suggestions, my email is zibby@zibbyowens.com. Thanks for listening. Thanks so much to my latest sponsor, the Mermaid Pillow Company, mermaidpillowco.com. They make these amazing pillows with sequins on the back and positive messages on the front, and they now even make custom pillows and blankets. It's an amazing company, and if you enter the code ZIBBY, Z-I-B-B-Y, you will get 10% off, which is super cool. So please check them out, mermaidpillowco.com. I'm excited to be interviewing Julie Satow today, who's the author of The Plaza, The Secret Life of America's Most Famous Hotel. Julie is an award-winning journalist who has covered real estate in New York for over a decade. She's a regular contributor to the New York Times, and her work has appeared on NPR, HuffPost, Modern Loss, Kveller, and the New York Post, among others. A native New Yorker, she currently lives in New York City with her husband and 2 children. Hi, Julie. Thanks so much for coming on Moms Don't Have Time to Read Books.
Thanks so much for having me. It's an honor.
Oh. After you were on the Today Show yesterday, this will probably be a piece of cake.
Well, that was taped, so it's not airing for a little while, so it was like the pressure was off slightly.
Okay.
Yes.
This is also taped.
That's right, exactly.
The Bushes and I, we same thing. So congratulations on The Plaza.
Thank you so much.
Exciting.
Thank you.
So can you please tell listeners what The Plaza is about and what inspired you to write it?
Yes, The Plaza is a biography of the hotel, but it's also a social history of New York. So I use it as a lens to tell a social history from 1907 through today of what was happening in New York and the country and through the stories of The Plaza. Why was I inspired to write it? I've covered real estate for a long time in New York, and I grew up here. So The Plaza was always like a presence, right? Like you go to Central Park after school, sometimes in the afternoons, and it was always there. And my grandmother used to stay there. I also was married there. Thursday, will be my 10-year anniversary. It's coming full circle. So yeah, and the beside the personal stuff, I felt like what's really cool about the Plaza is that really it's like a mirror. Everything that's happening in New York and everything that's happened around the country happens at the Plaza. So whether it's union tensions, business trends, even today, condominiums and foreign investors, just no matter what the trend is, it seems that the Plaza reflects that. So it was a really rich topic.
To me, when I read it, it's like the Plaza was just the set, but the story was something else. Do you know what I mean? Like,
oh yeah,
it wasn't
true.
Actually, it seemed to me like it wasn't the history of the Plaza itself it was.
Yeah.
But it was also just this amazing story of culture and life and all the characters in it, and that was like the backdrop.
Yeah, totally.
Like,
that's right. It was like an excuse.
Yeah, it's like a play where that would be the set of the play, and then anyway,
that was totally like, I kind of just went where I was interested. So I found all these amazing stories that I had never heard of before, even though I thought I knew the Plaza. I feel like a lot of people think they know the Plaza, they know Eloise, they know whatever, but I discovered all these stories. And so it was like a great excuse just to tell a bunch of stories. I felt like.
No, you're such a good storyteller. I mean, literally from the minute it opens up, you're in it, right?
Oh, that's awesome.
The Vanderbilt getting out of his car, right? Was he a Vanderbilt?
Yes, he was.
Vanderbilt getting out of his car and walking in, and the girl on the counter. I mean, the whole thing, it's so visual the whole way.
Oh, that's awesome.
Anyway, I thought it was awesome. Yeah. You start the book with this great introduction, which you wrote in the first person, which was great because not always, they don't, that was it was really nice introduction because I felt like it was you telling the story, and maybe because I met you.
Oh.
But so in the introduction, you said the intention of the book was in part to memorialize the 111-year history of the Plaza, but also that the Plaza was like the giving tree, like Shel Silverstein's giving tree, and that everybody was taking a piece. Can you explain what you meant by that?
Yeah, I mean, it's had like multiple owners since the beginning, and it really, because it's such like an icon, people who are attracted, who want to own it, they want a trophy property. So it really is about, a lot of times for the owners, it's about vanity, it's about branding. So they sort of use the Plaza for their own self-aggrandizement. So I felt like, obviously owners have loved the hotel and cared for it, but a lot of times they've sort of used it for their own ends. So for instance, Harry Black was the first owner, and he's this interesting character in and of himself. He also did the Flatiron building and all this stuff. But he, for him, the Plaza, he lived in the penthouse, and it really was his calling card and part of his identity. And you may know, right? You read the book. He tried to commit suicide in the bathtub of the hotel after he lost a lot of money during the 1929 crash. And there was just a lot of, Conrad Hilton used the hotel as sort of his entree into New York and trying to become this big player. Before that, Conrad Hilton was considered this Westerner, this uncouth Texan. He comes to New York and he, buys the Plaza, and all of a sudden everyone takes him seriously. Obviously, Donald Trump owned it. He bought it at the height of sort of the go-go 80s, at the height of his, fame as a real estate developer. And, so I feel like it was often sort of used, more recently, the last owner was this guy, Subrata Roy from India. And I guess he's the sort of most extreme example where he bought the hotel and then obviously he got into some legal issues at home in India. And he really did siphon off any money that the hotel was making for his own legal and criminal issues back in India. So
I feel like you had some line where it was like, who knew walking by that the owner is actually in some random prison in India?
Yes,
you know what I mean? You just didn't know.
Right. People don't know that. Yeah. And I think people would go into the hotel and be like, wow, it doesn't have that same feeling that it used to have. So I felt like with the Giving Tree, it's like this boy loves this tree, but he just keeps taking from it, until there's really nothing left and the tree keeps giving of itself. So I felt kind of like the Plaza had done the same thing. It sort of gave every piece of itself over to these owners.
Just has the palm court. It's just this one little place. It's so sad.
Kind of sad. Yeah.
You also wrote this book, I'm going to quote, "This book is a history of the 1% of celebrity, of pop culture, and gossip. It also examines how the Plaza is ground zero for the increasing globalization of money and the slow decoupling of pedigree from wealth." So it's from Alfred Gwynne Vanderbilt to Kim Kardashian, right? Mm-hmm. It's the ultimate. So talk to me a little more about the shift, how in the beginning you paint a portrait of the Plaza being the ultimate place for high society and how people would actually move in there for all the amenities, and how now, of course, now people are back to moving in, but it's completely different.
But it is true. I think that it's sort of the story of money, the story of wealth, and I think in some ways wealth has changed. It was Alfred Gwynne Vanderbilt was the first guest. He was one of the country's wealthiest men. There were more than 1,600 chandeliers at the Plaza, and 2 men whose only job was just to dust the chandeliers. I mean, the opulence was just amazing. Right? And now wealth is much more about investment. It might be a foreign investment. The Plaza is largely condominiums. A lot of the really glamorous rooms where all the stars used to stay facing Central Park are now, multi-million-dollar apartments owned by absentee owners, many of whom don't even stay there or have never even been there and really use it as an investment. And I think that's sort of what's happened with wealth. It's become much more of a commodity, less of a lifestyle. So the Plaza reflects that.
You had that sad line where all the corridors are dark because everybody who owns them never goes to those
really
floors.
Sad.
It's just this almost abandoned wonderland or something.
I know, and it's been an issue. It's happening across New York. I think actually you had mentioned in one of your emails how today people are moving back into hotel. So in the beginning, people did live in the Plaza.
Yes, that was a question I had.
Oh wait, sorry, am I jumping ahead?
No,
okay.
No, I'll ask it now.
Okay.
No, I had said that I didn't realize that hotel, even the words hotel and apartment at the beginning were synonymous, because now obviously they're not. And I was wondering, is it the same? Do you think it was the same then, getting all those extra perks as families who want to move into apartment buildings in the city that have playrooms and a concierge who does dry cleaning? Or do you think this is the modern day kind of clubby, 15 Central Park West type of building? Or is it a Hudson Yards where they have the new,
Right. It's so funny when I read that email because I was like, I'm writing that story for the New York Times right now.
Hudson Yards?
No, about how people used to live in hotels and how it's sort of, they're coming back to that idea now today, how it used to be that hotels and apartments, as you said, were sort of synonymous, and 90% of the people who checked into the Plaza in 1907 lived there full time. It was their home. And how today a lot of condominiums have become a lot like hotels with all of these amenities. You know, you have private lounges and restaurants that cater to the residents. And, 432 Park is essentially, in many ways, has a lot of the amenities of a hotel. Mm-hmm. So I do think we're like returning to that. The Plaza now, I think, is, it is like the Time Warner Center or 432 Park or any of these new towers we're seeing rising, where it offers, a lot of the benefits of a hotel, but they're still apartments.
But there's something about the Plaza now which has a feel to me like almost like New Orleans or something, or like a place that used to be, you can feel the history.
Yeah.
And yet it's like not run down is the wrong word. There's still so much charm in New Orleans and everything.
But
the
it's a little rough around the edges now at the Plaza. I mean, for instance, I was doing an interview with one of the waiters who's worked at the Palm Court for, he used to be at the Oyster Bar. He's worked there forever. He's been there for 40 or 50 years. This guy, Luigi. And he was like, look around at the dishes and you'll see that they don't match, because every time someone breaks a dish, we just replace it. We don't have matching dishes. So a lot of the tea service are not even matching anymore. And that was really the case, as I said, that when the owner was this Indian guy, Subrata Roy, he was really siphoning all the money away from the hotel to help himself. And there was just really no money going back into the hotel. Last year in June, so exactly a year ago, the Qatari government bought the hotel, and they obviously have a lot of wealth. So I tried to end it on a more positive note, saying I hope these new owners are going to actually give it that love and attention that it needs, because it is a very expensive endeavor to upkeep it. It's this ancient, it's this historic building. I think also because the residences are cut off from it's its own entryway. You're not allowed to go in there. It's sort of very divided. I think it's created this awkward feeling too.
I mean, I can't even imagine the expenses related to this. You said there were 1,500 in help in the beginning.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know how many people work there now, but
not that many. Not as many as that. Yes. Back in the day, yeah. I mean, it made sense back in the day to have these huge grand hotels. But if you look around in New York, we really don't have that now. A lot of the hotels are more boutique. Mm-hmm. Even the Waldorf Astoria, which is not the historic Waldorf Astoria, but it's now being made into condominiums too. It's just so expensive here in New York. I still find it confusing why, in London, you have these grand hotels that are so beautiful, like the Dorchester or something. They seem to make it work there. But here, it's
I think
gone away.
I used to know, I know analytically that rent and everything is high, commercial real estate and everything. But I have to say, I just recently started investigating because I'm thinking about opening a little bookstore somewhere in the city, which I'm really excited about. But I started looking at rents and I was like, oh my gosh. First of all, it's double on Madison. And I know this from looking at,
But you don't realize
residential real estate, but just how on earth could I sell enough to justify that rent? I'd have to think of something. Anyway, so when I think about something with the square footage of the Plaza, it must be astronomical.
Yes. It doesn't really make sense, but there's nothing that can be done because it's a landmark building, so they could not tear it down. In the 1960s, they made it landmark. So basically, it protected the building, thank goodness, and it's saved the Plaza. But Hilton, for instance, actually in the 1960s, before it was landmarked, was trying to convince the owners at the time that they should tear it down and build an office building, what happened to the GM.
But that would be so sad.
Yeah.
I'm really glad they didn't do that.
I know, exactly. But the real estate is,
it's hard to
right.
do that dance, I guess. I feel like this should be a Downton Abbey limited series? Have you talked to, are you making this into a movie or something?
I please tell my agent that.
Okay, I will.
I do have...
Agent, I'm calling you. This is my idea. I can see the whole thing in my head.
Well, I do have a film agent who's like been shopping it around for scripted series, but so far nothing. I'm hoping that maybe...
Well, it hasn't even come out yet.
I know, that's true. So maybe when it comes out. I do know that there's another book that's out about the Chateau Marmont in LA.
That's right.
And that's being made into an HBO series. So maybe I lost my chance. I don't know. But I feel that we need a New York version.
That is so different. That
right.
has a totally different...
It's more about like...
No, this is more like...
Old glamour.
Yes, old glamour.
Right, I agree. I wrote it very like upstairs, downstairs is how I try to do the wealthy guests, but also the people who work there.
Did you think about doing it as? Let me just read you the book for you.
Yes.
I'm just wondering if you thought about doing it as historical fiction and having all of this as the backdrop, but having some like story of some.
I mean, I think it would be amazing. I have the worst imagination. I'm a journalist, and I feel like that would have been fantastic. And if a screenwriter out there would like to buy the rights and do that, I'm fully into it. I feel like there's a lot of germs like that could be expanded out into great fiction.
Yeah. So
not by me.
In your Goodreads description, you mentioned that doing the research at the New York Public Library was one of your favorite parts of this project. And then you said elsewhere that you had read over 1 million articles, which is insane.
Yeah, that is insane. So when I was like...
I'm like, she must have started
really
this when she was 4.
I know, exactly. So I actually was like, when I was fact-checking the book, I was like, maybe I shouldn't say... I changed that to tens of thousands, which is like...
Oh, you
actually,
did? Okay. Yeah, I only have the old version.
You have the galley, exactly.
Okay.
Because I tried to count. So the research
I'm picturing my son. 1, 2, 3.
That was basically me. It was really, So the research for me was so amazing. First of all, I was in the Allen Room at the library, and it was so cool because it's named for this guy whose first name is escaping me right now, but he wrote these amazing histories of the 1920s and 1930s, and I used his research in the book, so it was like very cool. And the library was amazing being there, and what was so cool is that they have digitized all newspapers now. So many newspapers are digitized. So it's like revolutionary, I feel like, for a researcher, because you don't have to use microfiche. So I didn't need to know the date of a newspaper I was looking for. I could just use keywords. And tens of thousands of articles came up with Plaza Hotel and New York. And I basically combed through all of them from 1890 through 2018.
It's amazing.
And it was intense. But I discovered all these stories, so it was like super cool.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I love hearing stories of people actually using libraries.
Oh my God, it was amazing. And the librarians also, because they were just so awesome. Like I met with this librarian, John, who I think in my book, he's like knows about all the finances. So he helped me find all the old annual reports for the original company that built the plaza. And I was able to, my original version of the book was much more business heavy. I pulled that back somewhat, but it was so cool. Like just figuring all of that out and reading the old documents. It was amazing.
I'm on the library council of the New York Public Library. If you ever want to get involved.
Oh, really?
Maybe I'll have you.
For sure.
I'm going to bring you to the next event.
I told my publicist, I was like, I want to be in the summer reads thing.
Yeah.
I don't think I'm in it, but anyway, I tried.
That I have nothing to do with. But I'm working on my own summer reads list.
Oh, really?
Yes,
oh, cool. Well,
not that it's the same as the millions of New York Public Library people.
Yeah.
Do you have any things that stand out aside from your wedding, maybe of things that happened to you in the plaza that tie you to it emotionally? You said your teas with your grandma and...
Yeah, I mean, obviously my wedding is probably... I wish I kept a diary because I would have loved to have remembered like why I picked the plaza, like of all the places in New York, what that was about, my thought process at the time. But I think I just always felt like, it's an icon like the Brooklyn Bridge or the Empire State Building, I feel like. And for a long time, it was kind of the living room of New Yorkers. I feel like a lot of people, when, you'd be shopping in Midtown and you needed a restroom, it had the most beautiful restroom and you could go in, or you could just sit in the lobby and listen to music in the Palm Court and just kind of hang out for a little while. It was this beautiful resting space. And I feel like that is not necessarily the case so much now. But so it just was always it felt I felt very at home there, even though it wasn't my home, you know?
So my favorite experience at the Plaza, I might have told you this when we had tea there or whatever.
No.
So I used to write letters to authors. I sound so creepy, but I've I know I'm serious. I love books and I've always been really interested.
So cool.
So when I was a little girl, I would write letters. I would look up the publisher in the back and my mom would help me find the address.
That's amazing.
I would handwrite in my script letters to authors. And there was one author named Zibby O'Neill. So my name is Zibby and I hadn't really heard of any other Zibbies. So I wrote her a letter.
Is that your real name? Or
Elizabeth.
Oh, okay. Got it.
So I handwrote her a letter and I sent it to her publisher and it got to her in Ann Arbor, Michigan. And she wrote me back and we had this pen pal relationship for
that
2 years.
So cute.
And then finally she came to New York and she picked me up in my apartment and took me to tea at the Plaza.
No,
yes.
Seriously? So cute.
It was so sweet. I wore this shoulder padded matching blouse and skirt. I can see it in my mind. So awful.
Oh my God.
But I thought I was with the biggest rock star of all time. To me, an author was oh my gosh. So
that is the cutest story ever. Wait, does she know what you're doing now? Have you kept in touch with her?
I actually tried to find her recently on Instagram and Facebook, and I couldn't find her. And anyway, I'm going to keep digging.
Wow.
But I have to reconnect.
Oh my gosh,
this was oh my gosh, so many years ago.
That's adorable.
30 plus. Anyway, so can we switch to this? Okay, so your modern loss article.
I know. I have to say, first of all, I
don't have to talk.
No. I had coffee the other day with Rebecca Satow.
Oh, I
know. So I was like, I'm going on. So we were talking about that.
So Modern Loss, the founder and editor of the website Modern Loss, Rebecca Sofer, was on Moms Don't Have Time to Read Books.
Yes.
And for her book, Modern Loss, Candid Conversations on Grief. And so that's what we're talking about. But she has this website where people it's like the HuffPost of grief.
Yes, that's a good way to describe it. Yeah.
Thank you. You just keep me around long enough. I know. So you wrote this. Really, I hadn't heard this about you, and I didn't realize your brother had died, and I didn't realize he had died from suicide at age 20. And the article you wrote was, it was shocking and moving and beautiful. And
thank you so
I
much.
read it twice last night.
You did?
Really, Under the House. It was called. It was so good.
Oh, thank you.
Anyway, that was the one that was on Modern Loss, right? Yeah. Okay. So you tell about your family to sort of get over the grief, buying a house way up north and basically shoving all of his belongings in the basement, including a car that they continued to pay car insurance on, just to still there. Yeah. Oh my gosh, out of sight, out of mind type of thing. And you had this quote and you said from the beginning, during those terrible months, my parents stuck to my surviving brother and me like an octopus suctioning its tentacles to a rock in a strong current. If they let go, they thought they would float away. Oh,
yeah.
And then you wrote another one called From a Distance, which tackled sort of the same subject. Mm-hmm. So talk to me about your decision to write openly about this. Why in this piece? Why now?
Yeah.
All this.
It is a weird thing because as a journalist, you're very third person. So it was scary. I wasn't sure how my family would take it. They've been very supportive. I thought it was very cathartic. I have known Gabby, who's the other founder of Modern Loss, for a long time. We worked together years ago. And she lost her father and stepmother. And I knew her not long after my brother had committed suicide. So we really bonded on that. So when she started Modern Loss with Rebecca, I was always sort of involved and was a contributing editor and stuff for a little while. And so I felt like I wanted to contribute to them and contribute to their amazing project. So I sort of did this thing that was a little out of character for me. Yeah, I feel like the one thing I have is my writing. So it's hard when you lose someone to keep the memory alive and also to do that person justice. Jed was so young that he didn't really get a chance to make a huge mark in the greater world. He did amongst us with its friends and family, but I felt like maybe it's a way to kind of keep that memory out there in a wider way. My parents, as maybe have a foundation that they started, so that was sort of their thing, I wasn't really necessarily very involved in the beginning. It was kind of painful, but now I am more involved. But so this was more my thing, I guess.
Had you used writing to help you through that before, just privately? Or?
Yes, privately, yes. For many years, I kept a diary, and I remember. I mean, I was in so much shock after he died. He was not diagnosed with any mental illness. It was a long time ago. It was in the late 90s. So it was way before mental health had sort of reached it wasn't as acknowledged or known about at the time. And so he was never really diagnosed with anything. He was always just sort of a little wild and crazy and funny and very charismatic and emotional. But it wasn't, we had no concept that young people can have depression and it can look very different from what, as someone just wanting to sleep all the time. And we weren't really educated. So it was such a shock that I had a really hard time processing it for maybe the first few years. And so writing just for myself was a way to kind of get those thoughts out.
Oh my gosh.
It was weird. I know, it's sad.
I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
Do you feel like it changed the trajectory of your life? Like, do you feel like it's a moment like you put a pin in and it goes a different way?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, in a weird way, this is the wrong word. I'm not grateful for it, but I feel like I live a much better life now because of it, because I'm just so much more conscious of what life is about. And I feel like at first I was not, I was a little crazy. I didn't really know how to process what had occurred, but as I sort of got through the grief process, I feel like I've made very conscious decisions about my life and what I do. And that's a direct result of going through this insane loss and knowing how precious life is. It sounds so cliche.
Not at all.
But
I don't think that not at all.
Yeah. And I feel like I'm a much better parent and wife. And just, I feel like even the book, none of that would have been possible without sort of the intention I feel like I live my life with now that before I didn't. So I have more appreciation for things,
I think that until you've gone through a loss, it's hard to, you can know something intellectually and not live by it because you don't, but once your world has been shook up like that, it's hard to go back.
That's so true. I agree.
Which also sounds cliche, but
but it's true. I mean.
And so the Jed Foundation, now you're involved with that.
Yes, I'm on the board now. It really is an amazing organization. So it's named for my brother, and it helps educate high schools, colleges, and we're even working now with younger kids because the diagnoses are happening so much younger now, helping them deal with how to help kids, basically. So there's a program that works with the colleges on instituting certain best practices to make sure that they're really helping all the students get through what can be a very stressful process, college. And now we're starting the same program for high school. And we have a pilot program in New York with a few schools we're working with now. And then they're also doing something with the public school system in the city, 5th through 8th grade. So I really do think it's saving lives and helping. And I think also Jed Foundation was really, when we started, like I said, nobody really knew about kids and, bipolar or depression or what it is. And I think we've really raised so much awareness. So I'm proud of it,
I'm on the board of the Child Mind Institute.
Yes.
I feel like we should do something together.
I know.
We should have
I know. And I feel like they definitely
work together?
They definitely know of each other. I'm not sure what projects they've done together, but yes, they work in a similar space.
Yeah. Well, maybe we can, I don't know.
That would be cool. That would be amazing.
To raise awareness for
absolutely.
Mission. I also loved your piece on Joan Rivers and how she was always how she was always so open about her husband's suicide and how she didn't couch it and how refreshing that was. How it helps get it out there. It almost helps you, if you can say it, it helps you process your shock and how you feel you can see it on someone else's face like a mirror.
Right.
I'm not explaining that
well.
No,
I know what you're saying. I felt so weird for so long. People were always oh, there's the girl whose brother committed suicide. You kind of carry this weird, and people are so awkward around you because they don't know how to bring it up or how to discuss it, or people don't want to discuss it. And you do want to talk about it. Like I want to talk about my brother. Like I loved him, So it is this like weird thing. And so when someone, and she was talking about suicide way, way early on, So I feel like, yeah, it's great to break those, it's much, in some weird ways, it's easier to talk if someone has cancer. It's like, okay, it's less scary maybe,
Right. Yep.
So yeah. So thank you, Joan.
Thank you for sharing your experience. And I'm sure it helps so much other people who are going through this who might not be able, don't have the forum to express how they feel. And anyway, it was just...
thank you so much,
Now
Sydney.
you have to write a memoir.
No.
Yes.
Nobody wants to know.
Yes, they do. Yes, they do. I swear to God. That's
Really?
what like so many good memoirs
Only if
are
you
made of.
write one. I feel like you need to write one too.
I'm working on one.
Oh, there you go.
Okay, well, aside from my idea for your next book, what else do you have coming up? Are you thinking about writing anything new? Are you going to do more journalism? I know you're an avid writer already.
Yes, I am working on my proposal for my next book. It's been like a little hard because I've been trying to do publicity for this book, which is coming out in like 2 weeks, which is crazy. But yes, I have an idea. I am working on it. It has nothing to do with real estate or New York, actually, but I think it'll be really cool, and I'm excited for it. Hopefully, I'm sending good energy out there that it'll get done. Yeah, so I'm hoping to be done with it in the next week or two, and then start, talking to my agent more about it. So
excellent.
Yeah.
Do you have any parting advice to aspiring writers?
Oh God, I mean, I feel like in my career, I fought tooth and nail for everything. It was tough, and journalism is hard, and especially now, there's not, there's just. It's really hard to get, there's just fewer jobs out there. So many more people are freelance. I feel like it really comes down to being accurate. Editors really want to make sure that if they trust you and they're taking a pitch, that you're going to be accurate, you're fact checking, that you know what you're doing, and they can trust you. It's such a trust thing. So I feel like, be really careful when you're pitching and when you're doing stories. I feel like your byline is your calling card. So that's really important. And, just try. I feel like every time I walk around, I come up with story ideas. Everything around you is always a story idea if you're looking that way. So I feel like just have that awareness, and then, yeah, just go for it.
That's awesome. I love it. That's great.
Is that good?
That was great.
I don't know.
I loved it.
Okay.
Well, thanks for coming on Moms Don't Have Time to Read
so
Books.
much.
So fun.
I know. It was great.
Thanks again to my sponsor, Mermaid Pillow Co. mermaidpillowco.com/Zibby. Enter code Zibby for 10% off. Thanks so much. Check out those really awesome giftable pillows and blankets. Thanks for listening to Moms Don't Have Time to Read Books. You can follow me on Instagram at Moms Don't Have Time to Read Books and at Zibby Owens, and my new podcast at Kids Do Have Time to Read. Thanks so much to Steve and Ryan at Texture Sound for the sound editing, and thank you to Morning Moon Productions for providing this fantastic intro and outro music. Thanks for listening. You could always email me at zibby@zibbyowens.com.